It is finally here, the beginning of the end, the start of the collapse of the progressive world order, which has been the absolute dominant cultural force in the world for a decade plus now, to the point where it has had governments, companies and corporations alike fighting tooth and nail in its corner, actively legislating against and censoring anyone who has dared to stand in opposition to their goals and their ideals. And yet now, after so many years of that opposition piling up slowly but surely, I really do think we are seeing the tipping point now. The first few cracks in the fundament that will see the toppling of the Tower of Wokeism. Grand terms, I know, but now I am actually quite optimistic. I've been saying for a while now that we are seeing the turning of the tide, and I think we've actually reached that eventual tipping point now. Let me show you a few interesting little things that have been happening recently. For example, this article right here from last week. Riot admits that localization teams censor LGBTQ+ content in certain countries. Now, in case you are unaware, Riot Games is the creators of League of Legends. Riot Games is an incredibly woke company where it's even seen several sexual abuse lawsuits levied against it, which I consider to be pretty much the definition of a woke company. And yet it now has decided to take the knee and censor its game, proudly LGBTQ as it is, with the introduction of their first black gay character simultaneously with this admission, mind you, in a time where actually the norm was closer to Disney's stance on the recent Buzz Lightyear movie. Disney's refusal to cut Lightyear scenes promoting LGBT led to ban. That's correct. There was a lesbian kiss in the Buzz Lightyear movie, which saw the movie being threatened to be banned in several countries that are, well, not the West, let's simply put it like that. And Disney forged ahead, figuring, well, this'll be a fantastic virtue signal for us. This'll be a genuine win. People will flock to the cinemas to watch this brave movie. But of course, it flopped miserably because these days that kind of stuff isn't brave anymore. 20 years ago I would have applauded this personally. Yeah, no, screw the people who can't accept as something as basic as a quick peck on the lips in a movie. There's no issue in that. And yet these days, of course, we know what that means. It isn't the kiss itself that's the problem. Nobody cares. It's not objectionable. It is the agenda behind it, which we have been told exists by Disney itself again and again and again, and it is, again, a simple sign of wokeness. Something which even normal people are avoiding like the plague now. And so a company like Riot, which, as you can see here, are wide awake, shall we say, even they are looking at the situation right now and going, yeah, no, we're gonna have to focus on the bottom line first, and if that means censoring our principles, well, they were never our principles to start with, as it turns out. And here's the thing. So long as this is all limited simply to our sphere, the kind of the geekdom area of video games and movies and television show and Star Wars and 40k, this is not really a concern for the layman, for the everyday person, but it's not anymore. As we also saw with the recent World Cup, which I have been quite enjoying, I must say. I've never cared much for football, but after this I might just become a fan. As my favourite part, of course, was World Cup teams will not wear rainbow armbands after FIFA threatens yellow cards. So several nations, 7 I believe, had all pledged to go on to the field wearing One Love armbands, signifying their support of the LGBTQ community. But after Qatar, the host country, threatened them with a yellow flag, which, by the way, isn't even a suspension. It's not you get a yellow and then you're off the stage or anything like that, or pitch more correctly. No. It is if you get a second one, then you're off. Meaning that in reality, it's not even that much of a punishment. If you truly believed in this shit, you would have marched onto that pitch proudly. You would show it off to everyone, and then you would take the yellow card and you'd put it in your pocket, and it'd be a sign of fucking pride for you. But not one of them did. Not a single player, not a single nation, not a single team did it, because it doesn't matter. They don't care. This is as empty a virtue signal as it gets, and it gets better. As Germany then felt silenced, you see, here we have a team of multi-millionaire sports superstars who flew to Qatar on a special jet airplane, complaining about how they are being censored, you see. You fuckers have no clue what censorship actually is, and I pray you never will, frankly. And this also said they, of course, sent the team to a early World Cup exit. An absolute disaster where they were beaten by Japan. Which I find particularly delicious. Because that thing about the jet, well, this was the jet. Diversity wins. Thank you, God. That is exactly what I always wanted. And the team who beat them? Japan. Well, from one particular perspective, they are a 100% diverse team, and so their victory was inevitable. From the other perspective, it is also a 100% Japanese team. the least diverse team they could possibly have mustered in their area. It is genuinely fantastic to see, and the biggest, most important thing of it all here, again, I know I've been simping a lot for all Elon, but this shit is genuinely important. Now, I know the Twitter files have received a lot of complaints and criticism for, well, slow rolling the entire thing, and I understand. I get it, right? It's slow, it goes a course of hours, there's frequent delays, it's not as pithy as you would have liked. It's not a quick news dump and then all of the various influencers and news reporters can get on it and report it first to everyone. I get it. And hey, you know, I sympathize. I do this thing too, to a certain extent anyways. But it is actually vital that this stuff be put out slowly. It needs to be a gradual reveal. This can't just be an info dump. In large part because, well, tidbits like this would probably disappear in the enormous amount of paperwork. We have, for example, this was the latest dump over the banning of President Trump, saying that, well, Twitter themselves didn't see the incitement to violence angle here. Twitter admitted that no, it didn't appear as if Trump was actually violating the rules, because as they mentioned, when he was referring to American patriots, he was referring to his voters, not to the terrorists, as Twitter calls them, who stormed the White House. Oh, no, White House, Congress, wasn't it? Yes. Excuse me, not American after all. But the reason why this is so important too is this needs to come out slowly. Over time, because it will be ignored by the mainstream media. I've seen Tim Pool, for example, a guy that I quite like, saying that, okay, you drop these things at these times when you would normally bury a story in the mainstream media. You're absolutely right, Tim, but these would never be picked up by the mainstream media to begin with. These news drops are not for them, they are for normies. They are for the people that aren't us, the people who didn't know that Twitter was censoring people or actively shadow banning them, the people who aren't involved in our sphere of gaming and entertainment culture, the people who haven't been getting lambasted, bombasted and attacked with this shit for the last decade, the people who, well, they know wokeness. It is a curse word to them. Hell, even my family recognizes this as the curse word now, and I live in the middle of bumfuck Norway. For years, my mother acquired a post-it note next to her work computer to remind her how to turn it on. Not the most internet-savvy of Densians, my mother, though I love her dearly. And even she recognizes this as a goddamn curse word at this point. But these kind of slow rolls out has a continuing news cycle. It is a long-term barrage of tiny little tidbits, is small pieces of information that might pop up anywhere on anybody's timeline at any time. They might be mentioned by mainstream media sources. They might be referenced by internet pundits, online personalities, etc. It's this long, slow boil of it, which is important, which will slowly draw in more people. It'll give them more information. It'll give them more context. It'll allow them to immerse themselves in the world that we've spent 10 years living in. And I remind you too, how ridiculously naive we were when all of this started. Hell, I wasn't even in on the ground floor. I was like generation 2, quote unquote, of the Gamergate style stuff, right? And when I first came in with, for example, the, what was it, yeah, tabletop gaming has a white male terrorism problem. That was a genuine article, by the way. When I first was reading that, I was like, this person doesn't know. This person is making shit up, no doubt. And if I could explain to them that the things they're complaining about isn't actually a problem in 40k, then in all due likelihood, they'll go like, oh, all right, well, I thought this was like a misogynist hobby or something. You thought there was some kind of avenue for communication. You were trying to explain things to people who had no interest in having this explained to them. For them, this was a power grab. This was a power play. It was an effort to gain influence and positions of power within the company and corporations, within the wider sphere of the community, within I'm blanking on the word right now, the sphere, let's call it that, the sphere of that thing, of 40k, of Star Wars, of Lord of the Rings, of gaming in general, in comics, etc. All of these things that have been infiltrated, and many of them which have been outright destroyed over the years. It is going to take quite a while for all of this to truly begin to sink in to the public masses, and it is. It is even beginning to sink into the companies. Again, this might seem like a minor thing, and it kind of is. It kind of is. I mean, hell, Disney too has kowtowed to China on multiple occasions, that famous Star Wars poster, for example, and yet there is something special about this. There absolutely is, because this was what was heading towards being the norm. And again, 20 years ago, this would have been celebrated. Absolutely, it would have been celebrated. Screw those intolerant people. But it's not anymore because of the meaning of what they're selling, because of this word specifically is why it's no longer a good thing. And when even a company like this is beginning to see the need for localized censorship, you will excuse me for viewing that as a pretty big change of the tides there. And once more, the entire value of the Twitter files, which are still going to keep going, I would guess, is that it brings the normies into this. It finally reveals to them the world that we've already been so very saturated in, and it slowly is starting to bring the politicians on board as well, which is of course the key point here, because as I mentioned last video on this, if the political will is not there, then nothing can ever be done. Short of, well, literal actual revolution, that is, and let's hope we're not getting to that point anytime soon. Let's all face it, that would suck for pretty much everyone involved. But a cultural revolution is absolutely on the horizon, and one that, well, frankly, is well deserved at this point. Even Twitter itself. I've started using Twitter now because it's a nice place to be. Hell, I remember when I first got back on Twitter, it seems like I was getting bombarded with wokeness everywhere I turn. Now, I've barely even seen one. Perhaps, maybe this is what Twitter felt like for them for the last 10 years. I can kind of see why they wouldn't want to give it up right now. Let's hope that our moral compasses are less spinny than theirs. For if ours begin to turn too, well, turnabout is fair play and all that, right? But I'm genuinely optimistic about this. I am quite happy, in fact. This is again, I can't help but look at this. And again, you've still got the virtue signal. They're still trying to push it. As I mentioned, you've got their first... there you go, there's a picture of him. The first black queer character in official Riot League of Legends lore, which comes out at the same time as the company approves censorship in countries which just don't like this stuff. Maybe we still have a few lessons to learn from the Middle East after all. In fact, sign me up as a Morocco supporter in the currently ongoing World Cups. Go Morocco! Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.